She was framed for theft. Until the real culprit lost control, Laura sensed something was off the moment she stepped into the mansion's foyer. The house, usually predictable in its rhythm, felt suspended, like someone had pressed pause right after a heated argument. The staff avoided her eyes, and the silence was so controlled it almost felt rehearsed. Laura. Helena stood in the center of the room, posture immaculate, gaze sharp enough to cut through the air. Come here. She didn't need to raise her voice. Authority lived in the way she breathed. Laura set the cleaning cloth aside and walked toward her, trying to ignore the tightness growing at the base of her neck. Adrian was leaning against the far wall, attentive but withdrawn. He wouldn't look at her, and that alone made the moment feel even heavier. Helena opened a velvet case with practiced elegance, revealing a piece of jewelry Laura knew only by sight. Expensive, delicate, reserved for the kind of nights the family considered special. "Do you recognize this?" Helena asked. "I've never touched it," Laura replied, feeling her pulse rise. "Interesting," Helena said, her tone soft in a way that felt like a blade being drawn. "Because it disappeared last night and was found inside your purse this morning." The words hit Laura like a step on unstable ground. She staggered slightly. "This has to be a mistake. My purse stays in the laundry room. Anyone could—" "Stop!" Helena lifted a hand, silencing her. "I won't tolerate excuses." One of the employees approached with Laura's purse. The zipper was half closed, as if someone had been careless or hurried. "Open it," Helena ordered. Laura's hands trembled, but she obeyed. And there it was, buried between her belongings, the jewel she had never even held. For a moment she couldn't breathe. It wasn't the fear of being caught, it was the shock of watching her integrity be dismantled in front of an audience. "This isn't mine," Laura whispered, voice breaking. "Someone put it there." "And why would anyone do that?" Helena asked, lifting her chin with a mix of suspicion and triumph. Laura looked at Adrian, just one brief moment. He met her gaze, but only for a heartbeat. Then he looked away, and that was enough to tell her she was alone in that room. Laura straightened her spine, though her body trembled. "I didn't do this," she said, steady but fragile. "And I won't take the blame for something I didn't do." But the room had already made its judgment. In the silence, in the controlled expressions, in the way Helena snapped the velvet case shut, everything told her the verdict had been written before she even walked in. And that was how it began. Not with a mistake, but with an accusation rooted in something far more powerful than truth. When Laura walked through the mansion gates, it felt like her body was finally allowed to breathe again, like someone who breaks the surface after staying underwater far longer than they should. The quiet of the street clashed with the turmoil inside her as she made her way to the bus stop, trying to piece together thoughts that refused to settle into place. Back at the apartment, she found her mother and Mariana in the kitchen. The familiar sight, medicine bottles on the table, the faint smell of tea, was painfully at odds with the chaos she had just left behind. "You're home early," Mariana said, before noticing the empty look in her sister's eyes. Laura sat down, unsure if her voice would cooperate, but when she finally spoke, the words came heavy and disbelieving. "I was accused of theft. They fired me." The news hit the three of them like a door slamming shut. Mariana began pacing, unable to contain her outrage. Their mother reached for Laura's hand, trying to offer the steadiness she herself didn't feel. "That only means someone planted that necklace," Mariana said. "And you know it." Laura nodded, though she couldn't summon the strength to defend herself out loud. It was hard to fight in a world where an accusation weighed more than a lifetime de honestidade. But as she replayed the previous day, pieces began sliding into place, her purse hanging in the laundry room, the fact she hadn't used it, the sweet perfume lingering in the air, footsteps belonging to someone who shouldn't have been there. "I saw Isabel near the laundry room," Laura murmured. "I didn't think anything of it, but now it fits." The sentence had barely left her lips when the doorbell rang. The three women exchanged a look. The bell rang again, sharper this time. Laura opened the door. Adrian stood there, guilt etched across his face, urgency shadowing his posture. "We need to talk," he said. She hesitated, leaving the door half open between them. You watched me being humiliated in front of everyone. What could you possibly say now? Adrian inhaled deeply, as if preparing to confess something he had been running from. I saw my sister going through your purse yesterday. Laura froze, not surprised, but shaken by the confirmation. I should have said something, he continued. I failed, and you paid for it. A mix of indignation and desperate need for clarity surged through her. Why tell me now? Because you don't deserve to carry a lie that big. I want to help fix this. I want you to come back with me and face it together. The offer hit her like a blow. Returning to that house felt impossible. I'm not ready, she said. Adrian nodded, accepting the boundary she needed. Then I'll handle it. But I'm not letting this go on. Not anymore. When he walked away, Laura closed the door slowly and rested her forehead against the wood, trying to steady the storm swirling inside her. For the first time since everything began, the truth wasn't just an intuition. It had form, it had weight, and it was finally moving in her direction. The story was shifting, and Laura, though still afraid, could feel that she was no longer being dragged helplessly by the current. Laura spent the rest of the afternoon trying to straighten her thoughts, but each attempt only tangled them more. She couldn't erase the image of Adrian standing at her door, the weight of his confession, the guilt etched into every word he had forced himself to say. Even Asim, the idea of going back to the mansion felt unreal, like asking someone to revisit the exact place where their dignity had been taken. When night fell, her phone buzzed. A short message from Adrian. He would speak to Isabel again. Laura read the message more times than she would admit, unsure whether it came from true responsibility or from the need to calm his own conscience. But intent no longer mattered. Fact did. Someone had put that necklace in her purse. Someone who had been near the laundry room. Someone who had no reason to be there besides making sure the blame fell on her. Laura inhaled deeply. She needed answers, not whispered apologies, not half confessions. Answers, not for Adrian, for herself. She grabbed her simplest coat, walked quietly so her mother wouldn't worry, and descended the stairs with steps steadier than she felt. The street was quiet when she boarded the bus. The ride to the gated community felt shorter than usual, maybe because this time she wasn't just returning to a place of work, but stepping into the heart of something she had never chosen. When she got off, the mansion loomed ahead, lit from the inside, shadows shifting behind wide windows. It no longer looked like a workplace. It looked like a stage where the truth had waited for far too long. Adrian was at the gate, as if he had known she would come. He didn't speak at first. He simply opened the gate and gestured for her to enter, not with urgency, but with a quiet respect for the courage it took her to be there. My mother doesn't know you're coming, he said as they walked through the garden. And it's better if it stays that way for now. Laura nodded, the air around them heavy as though the walls themselves were listening. And Isabel, she asked. She's in her room, and she's nervous. I insisted she talk to you, but she only agreed when she realized everything was already falling apart. They entered through a side door, avoiding the main hall. The lights were lower, soft, leaving a vulnerability in the air that wasn't there earlier. Adrian guided her down the hall toward the bedrooms. Isabel's door was slightly ajar, a thin beam of light cutting across the carpet. Laura stopped in front of it, feeling her heart accelerate. I'll wait out here, Adrian said. She needs to talk to you without me in the room. Laura steadied herself and pushed the door open. Isabel sat on the floor near her bed, clutching a pillow as if it anchored her to the ground. She straightened when she saw Laura, surprised, but not shaken, almost as if she had known this moment would come. Laura stepped inside and closed the door. I need to understand, she began, her voice calm but firm. Why was that necklace in my purse? Isabel looked away, tightening her grip on the pillow. Her expression wasn't defiant and it wasn't cruel. It was conflicted, guilt stitched together with a quiet, internal anger that seemed directed at everything except Laura. I didn't put anything in your purse, Isabel said, barely above a whisper. Yes, I was there. Yes, I went through your things. But I didn't plant the necklace. I didn't have the nerve. Laura frowned. The nerve to do what? Isabel breathed in slowly and forced herself to meet Laura's eyes. To stop my mother. The words dropped heavy between them. Laura needed a second to absorb them. Isabel continued, her voice trembling but resolute. She told me to watch you, to make sure nothing disappeared. She was angry about something else, something at the company I don't know. And she fixated on you. When you left early that day, she went into the laundry room. I was in the hallway. I saw her go through your purse, and when she left, the necklace wasn't in the jewelry room anymore. Laura felt the air leave her body. There it was. The truth laid out plainly, with no room left for doubt. Why would she do that? Laura asked, her voice cracking. Why make up something so serious? Isabel exhaled, long and slow, as if releasing a confession she had held for years. Because she didn't want you near Adrian. Laura froze. She thought you were getting too close, Isabel continued, or that he was paying too much attention to you. And for my mother, losing control of anything, even something she only imagines, is unacceptable. A wave of disbelief and anger washed through Laura. You understand that this destroyed my life? Isabel lowered her gaze immediately, unable to face the devastation she had helped maintain. I know, and I'm sorry. But I grew up watching her manipulate everything and everyone. For a long time I thought it was normal. Only now I realize how far it's gone, and someone has to stop her. Laura remained quiet for a moment, letting the weight of that sink in. I'll tell Adrian, Isabel said. He deserves to know. He needs to know. I just don't know what's going to happen afterward. Laura breathed in deeply. I just want my dignity back. Isabel nodded, meeting her eyes with a sincerity that felt rare in that house. And you will. Laura left the room slowly, as if carrying a new version of herself. Adrian stood exactly where he said he would, waiting. Their eyes met. She told me everything, Laura said. Adrian inhaled sharply, like someone bracing for a storm he could no longer avoid. Then it's my turn. He walked toward his mother's room. Laura watched him go, realizing this wasn't just a confrontation, it was a crack in the family's foundation. For the first time since it all began, she felt the truth moving forward, inevitable and unstoppable. Adrian walked toward his mother's bedroom with steady steps, but there was something different about him, something Laura had never seen before. The man who usually avoided conflict to keep the household running smoothly now moved like someone who had finally crossed an internal line he'd been afraid of for years. Laura watched from a distance, sensing that what was about to unfold would shake not only Helena's authority, but the foundation of that entire family. The door was slightly open. Helena stood at her vanity, removing the earrings she'd worn earlier. The moment she saw Adrian standing there, she knew this wouldn't be one of their routine conversations. What's that look for? She asked, trying to sound light, though tension bled through every word. Adrian closed the door behind him and stepped into the room's center. The necklace found in Laura's purse, he began. I know you put it there. Helena froze mid-movement, hands still near her ears. She turned slowly, studying him with a mix of irritation, disbelief, and a faint trace of exhaustion. And who told you that? She asked, her voice lower than usual. Isabel, Adrian said. And even before that, I already suspected something. I saw her going through Laura's purse the day before. Helena let out a short, controlled smile, one of those gestures meant to minimize the gravity of a situation she'd clearly lost control of. You're letting a housemaid influence you, she said. A girl who always knew her place until she decided to overstep. Adrian took a step closer, a rare edge in his voice. She didn't overstep anything, she was humiliated, and you know that. You let her take the fall for something she didn't do. You destroyed years of work, her reputation, over an impulse that never should have existed. Helena's gaze drifted away, searching for an argument she couldn't quite shape. When she met his eyes again, they were colder. I did what needed to be done, she said. This house has rules. She couldn't start imagining she had influence over you. For the first time in a very long time, Adrian didn't hide his frustration. She never tried to influence anyone. She kept to herself. You created a problem where there wasn't one, and now it's on me, on Isabel, on you, and above all on her. It was cruel, unnecessary, and shameful. Helena tightened her hands, as if struggling to regain a sense of control. "And what do you intend to do?" she asked. "Expose your own family?" "I intend to fix what you broke," he replied, unwavering. Something in her expression shifted, as if, for a brief moment, she grasped the full weight of what she'd set in motion. But the softness evaporated as quickly as it came. "Don't turn against me," she warned. "This house only survived because everyone understood their role." "Maybe that's the real problem," Adrian said, turning toward the door. "People keep getting hurt so you can keep your version of order." He opened the door. Just before leaving, Helena spoke, her voice stripped of its usual hardness. "Don't do this, Adrian." He paused, just long enough for her to know he'd heard her, then walked out. Laura was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall, caught between apprehension and strength. Adrian approached her. "She's not going to admit anything," he said. "Not now. Maybe never. But the most important part is out in the open. She used you to play a game that never should have existed." Laura nodded, her calm laced with quiet fury. "I just want my truth back." "And you'll have it," Adrian said. "But we need to be careful. Nothing else can spiral out of control." Laura studied him for a moment, trying to decide how much trust she could give someone who had stayed silent for so long. Still, something in the air felt different, like the pieces were finally shifting into the light. "There's a big gathering here tomorrow," Adrian continued. "Important people. She won't be able to control the narrative if the truth comes out at the right moment. Isabel is willing to speak, and I won't let you carry this alone." Laura breathed slowly, letting the words settle. It wasn't the justice she dreamed of. Nothing could erase the humiliation, but it was a beginning, and beginnings in her world were rare. "Then tomorrow is the day," she said. Adrian nodded with quiet certainty. The truth was finally taking shape, not as an outburst, but as a silent force pushing through walls, slipping into the cracks of old lies, demanding to be seen. By tomorrow, that house would have no choice but to face it. And nothing would be the same. The next morning arrived with a different kind of silence, as if the mansion itself anticipated the weight of what was about to unfold. Staff hurried through the hallways preparing for the evening's event, but underneath the movement lingered an unmistakable tension. Glances cut short, conversations broken abruptly, an unease woven into the walls. Laura watched the house from outside the gate. She didn't want to enter too early. She needed to breathe, to feel that, for once, she was the one deciding when and how she would step into that place again. Adrian had told her he would find the right moment because the truth needed space. It couldn't be whispered in a corner. It needed to be seen. When the gate opened, Isabel appeared. She looked paler than the day before, but there was a new steadiness to her posture, a resolve Laura never thought she'd see in the spoiled, volatile girl she had known. Without saying a word, Isabel motioned for Laura to follow. They entered through the side of the house, avoiding unnecessary encounters. Halfway down the corridor leading to the main hall, Isabel stopped. Her breathing was quick, shallow, as if she were gathering the last fragments of courage she had left. "I can't live with this lie anymore," she said finally. "I'm speaking today. If I stay quiet again, I'll never be able to look at myself." Laura simply nodded. In that family, Isabel might be the only one who truly had something to lose by telling the truth. It wasn't an alliance, not exactly, but it was more honesty than Helena had shown in years. When they entered the hall, some guests were already mingling. Adrian approached them quietly, attentive to every subtle shift in the room. "Are you ready?" he asked Isabel. She swallowed hard. "There's no turning back." Moments later, Helena appeared, impeccably dressed, exuding her usual aura of absolute control. Nothing in her mind ever slipped beyond her reach. But when her eyes fell on Laura standing in the hall, something flickered across her face. A crack, tiny but unmistakably real. "What is she doing here?" Helena demanded, advancing with sharp steps. Adrian stepped forward. "She's here because she deserves to hear what needs to be said." Helena opened her mouth to argue, But the look in Isabel's eyes made her hesitate, not out of fear, but because she recognized that her daughter had made a decision she couldn't override. Isabel drew a breath, steadier this time, and spoke loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "I saw everything. I saw you in the laundry room going through Laura's purse. I saw you put the necklace inside it. I saw you walk out knowing she'd be blamed for something she didn't do." Silence hit the hall like a shockwave. A few guests exchanged glances. Others pretended not to hear. But the truth was there, too clear, too loud to be undone. Helena's lips parted, but before she could shape a defense, Isabel continued. "You always said our family needed to be an example. That honor was everything. But nothing about what you did honors anyone. You humiliated someone who did nothing to you, just because the idea of losing control terrified you." Helena's breath stuttered. She looked at Adrian, perhaps expecting him to step in, to cushion her, to restore the balance she always relied on. But his expression held only exhaustion, years of unspoken compliance finally fractured. Laura stood still. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone was enough to strip the room of its illusions. Adrian's voice came next, calm but sharp. "You destroyed the trust people had in you. The least you can do now is return the truth to the person you tore it from." Helena tried to speak, but nothing came out. It was as if the structure that upheld her authority had finally cracked, and behind the rigid facade, something vulnerable flickered. Not remorse, but the realization that everything had slipped out of her hands. The entire room watched, and in that moment, regardless of whatever excuses Helena might later attempt, the mask had fallen. Laura felt something shift inside her, not triumph, not relief, but a grounded certainty that she had reclaimed a part of herself that had been violently taken. She didn't need applause. She didn't need sympathy. She just needed the truth to exist in the light. And now it did. Isabel's confession rippled through the room like a muted sound no one wanted to admit they had heard. No one reacted openly, yet the silence that filled the hall spoke volumes. There was no scene, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, only that uncomfortable stillness that descends when an inconvenient truth lands squarely in the middle of a room where everyone prefers polished facades over reality. Helena tried to recover her composure, but something essential had shifted inside her. Her face remained rigid, but the certainty in her eyes, the force that sustained her authority, had thinned. She turned toward the guests, muttered that she would address the matter later, and stepped away, unable to remain exposed a second longer. Adrian watched her departure with an expression made of exhaustion and disappointment. For his entire life, he had accepted his mother's decisions without question, but now he seemed to realize with a clarity almost painful that parts of his own identity had been shaped by a system incapable of acknowledging its own mistakes. Laura watched Helena retreat. She felt no triumph. There was no space for that. What she felt was something far quieter and far deeper, a clarity that came from finally seeing the injustice not erased, but illuminated. It no longer hovered as a shadow over her name. Isabel stood beside her, visibly shaken. Her hands trembled, and there was a childlike fear in her eyes, as if she expected punishment to strike at any moment. "You did what needed to be done," Laura said gently, but firmly enough for the words to land. Isabel let out a shaky breath, grounding herself in that validation. Adrian approached them both. "My father is talking to her," he said, avoiding details. "Things will settle, but maybe not today. The truth took too long to surface, and now everyone here has to face the parts they chose not to see." Laura nodded slowly. Whatever happened inside that family from this point on was no longer her burden. "You don't have to stay," Adrian continued. "You've faced enough." Laura looked around. The house, once overwhelmingly imposing, now seemed smaller, as though the architecture itself had bent under the weight of a truth it had tried to contain for too long. There was nothing left there that could hurt her. "I'm leaving," she said, "but not to run away. Just because I did what I came here to do." Adrian walked with her toward the front garden. The path was quiet, almost intimate, but devoid of expectation. Only a mutual understanding of the weight each of them was carrying. "Laura," he said softly when they neared the gate, I'm sorry for everything. I can't erase what happened, but I'll make sure it doesn't go unanswered. I'll take responsibility from here." She looked at him for a moment, searching not for promises, but for sincerity. "What I needed has already happened," she replied. "I just didn't want the truth to be buried." And with that, she stepped through the gate. Adrian remained where he was, watching her walk away, like someone who finally understood that some structures survive only through the absence of truth, and that once exposed, they demand changes that can't be postponed. Behind him, the house felt different, or perhaps it was simply that the lies no longer had a place to hide. Night settled over the city with an unusual calm, and Laura walked home with the quiet sense that something inside her had finally stopped sinking. Not because everything was resolved, far from so, but because, for the first time in 2 long days, the truth was no longer trapped in a place where she had no voice. When she entered the apartment, her mother and Mariana were sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. They both rose the moment she walked in, but Laura motioned gently for them to stay seated. Her face held exhaustion, but behind it was something new, small, subtle, but undeniably there, a steadiness. "They know," she said, pulling out a chair. "Everyone heard. No one has reason to doubt me anymore." Her mother exhaled with relief, though concern still lingered in her eyes. "Does that mean they'll ask you to return?" Mariana asked. Laura shook her head. "No. And even if they did, I wouldn't go back." A brief silence followed, not tense, not sad, simply the acknowledgement that a chapter had closed, and whatever came next would have to be built from the ground up. "All I wanted was my name back," Laura said softly. "Now I can move forward." Both nodded, and for a moment their small, simple kitchen felt warmer, safer, more honest than any place Laura had stood in the last months. The truth didn't bring celebration, but it brought peace. And sometimes peace was enough. In the next morning, the mansion existed in a strange state of quiet rearrangement. Whispers drifted through hallways. Staff moved carefully, watching one another with wary curiosity. No one knew what the family would do now that the veil had been lifted. Adrian descended the stairs early, his expression that of a man who had finally made a decision he'd avoided for years. He found his father in the study. The door remained closed, and though no one heard the words, the muffled tones made it clear it was not an ordinary conversation. When Adrian emerged, he held nothing but a small suitcase and a look of unshakable resolve. He crossed the hall without hesitation, ignoring the startled glances of the employees watching him. Helena appeared at the top of the staircase, her face drained of its usual sharp authority. "You're really leaving?" she asked, her voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. Adrian paused, but he didn't turn. "I need to learn how to live with the consequences of what I allowed." Helena stepped down 2 stairs, then stopped. There was a fragile, almost unfamiliar vulnerability in her expression, as though she had realized far too late that some lines cannot be crossed without losing more than pride can repair. "I did what I thought was necessary," she murmured. "So am I," he replied, and pushed open the door as he walked out of the house he had grown up in. No dramatic ending, no final confrontation, just the quiet understanding that certain truths require distance before they can be understood. Adrian left the mansion like someone finally choosing his own life, after years living inside a structure that had long stopped making sense. There was no rush in his steps, only the quiet firmness of a man who understood that some distances are necessary so that truth doesn't drown again in silence. Meanwhile, across the city, Laura was finishing a small stack of resumes she planned to deliver that week. The modest apartment felt oddly larger than before, as if the absence of fear had opened space for something new, not quite hope, but the possibility of building her future with her own hands, without carrying the weight of someone else's suspicion. The doorbell rang. She opened it and found Adrian standing there, holding only a slim folder. There was no tension between them, no unspoken expectations, just the recognition of 2 people who had lived the same storm from opposite sides and could now look at it with enough distance to share its weight more honestly. "I needed to bring you this," he said, offering the folder. Inside was a formal letter signed by his father, explaining what had happened, publicly recognizing Laura's innocence and taking written responsibility for the situation. It was a document she could attach to any resume, any interview, any opportunity ahead, something that closed the door on any shadow that might still cling to her name. "This is more than I expected," Laura said after reading it carefully. "I don't know what will happen to all of you, but I appreciate you doing what was right." Adrian nodded. "The truth needed to be said, even if it doesn't fix everything, and you deserve to walk away from this without carrying a burden that wasn't yours." Laura placed the letter inside the folder gently, feeling the steady weight of that gesture. It wasn't an apology disguised as kindness. It wasn't an attempt to undo the past. It was simply the confirmation that the lie had been exposed completely, and that she could now move forward without looking over her shoulder. "I'll find another job," she said, realizing the calm in her own voice. "Maybe somewhere smaller, maybe with fewer resources, but with more honesty. That's enough." Adrian watched her for a moment, as if debating whether to say something more, but understanding that anything beyond this might shift the delicate truth of the moment. "If you ever need anything I can do honestly," he said, "I'll be available. Not out of guilt, out of respect." Laura nodded, accepting it without creating expectations. She knew they would follow different paths, and whatever had connected them wasn't romance, nor debt, but a shared truth that demanded courage from both sides. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. "And I hope the same for you," he replied. He said goodbye and walked down the stairs with slow, thoughtful steps. And when Laura closed the door, she felt, truly felt, that this was the end of the story. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing else needed to be said. Her name was clean. The truth was out. Life was moving forward, finally free from the shadow someone had tried to cast over her. And sometimes that was all someone needed to start again. I want to know how far this story reached you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and support the channel. Your presence here truly makes a difference.